Tim Tebow sat down with Shawn Ryan and made a horrific fact claim about a terrible thing that has been happening that I think needs to be addressed, should be addressed. And I honestly didn't know it was this bad. Okay, so if you guys didn't know, Shawn Ryan, he's been blowing up. Tim Tebow, one of the OG NFL star Christians, right? Amazing dude. He sits down, and I'm glad this conversation happened, but they're talking about the issue of children and how they are trafficked, okay? And just a heads up.
Hide your kids, hide your
adult
wife.
Content.
Explicit, explicit, explicit.
Okay, this is really dark, so you've been warned.
To how God speaks to you, or the food tugs on your heart, your gut. MVPs, you want to help the most vulnerable. You have that. There's a lot of vulnerable people out there in a lot of different ways. And so how do you know which direction?
It's a really good question. A lot of times I would try to figure that out. A lot of time in prayer, discernment, wise counsel. But one of the ways that we talk about it is that that we try to gain clarity is what has God pricked your heart for and what has God opened your eyes to?
I mean, this man's already cooking. Out the rip. What does God put on your heart? What does he open your eyes to? This is good.
And if so, he's probably saying, go meet that need. So he pricked my heart and opened my eyes to meet Sherwin in the Philippines, the boy with his feet on backwards. And I believe he was saying it. I'm letting you see him and I'm letting you feel for him because I want you to care for him. And then along the way, it was more orphans and special needs and throwaways. And then a couple years later from that, it led into the fight against trafficking and exploitation because my dad was in an underground pastors conference in a country where faith isn't really allowed. And so he's meeting with these pastors underground so they don't get arrested and they can go back to their communities and minister. And in that underground location, men came in with 4 little girls and started to auction off these 4 little girls.
This is a sickness of the highest order.
That is terrible, man. Auctioning off humans, children, for perversion.
To all of the men that are in this place. And one of the reasons why my dad's one of my greatest heroes and role models, he just can't look the other way. And he didn't have a 7-step plan of what to do. He didn't have a plan of action, a strategic thought. He just was, no. Those girls are priceless to God. I got to do whatever I can. He took out all the money in his wallet, which was $1,250 for the rest of his trip and to get home. And he purchased the freedom of those 4 girls.
Wow.
And he called me afterwards and I said, hey, Dad, how's the trip going? How you doing? And he said, I'm doing okay. I was like, what are you up to? And he said, I just purchased the freedom of 4 girls. I'm like, what are you talking about, Dad?
You know, the crazy part is if that's all it costs, right? There has to be charities set up to just buy people out of this stuff, to buy women, young girls out of this sort of stuff, right? $1,200 to free 4 girls. Like that would be, I mean, there's probably a lot in the part of the world this is happening in, but that's not a ton of money. That I'm sure there's ways to organize this. Maybe he'll talk about it later.
He goes on to tell me the story, and I just knew in that conversation, and I don't know, Sean, it's hard to explain. I just knew this is also part of what we were called to do, meaning at TTF. And not long after I got to fly to that location, you show up and you're thinking all these thoughts like, oh, this is like Taken and Liam Neeson, and this is cartels, and it's, crime families and all of this. And by that time, we even had more kids. And by that time, when I got there, you realize most of these children were sold by their family. One of the first girls that I got to meet, she didn't make enough money one day. And so when she got home, her mom, in such a place of desperation, took her and boiled out her eye. And
oh my gosh.
Boiled out her eye?
Boiled out her eye.
Yeah, I mean, I think as having friends that have went to these parts of the world and done ministry there, I think a lot of this is also, some of these folks are really living like in destitute poverty, that they're doing this sort of stuff to their own kids. I think that's fairly accurate for places like Thailand, I think. I haven't talked to my friends that do this sort of ministry work, so yeah, that's dark.
I just knew God let me see. God let me see for a reason. God let me feel for a reason. Not so that I can just create awareness, or not so I can just tell a story, because he's saying, I let you see, I let you feel, I let you be here because I want you to do something about it.
Come on.
Because I want you to stand up and fight for her, because she doesn't have a voice. And all of these other boys and girls, they don't have a voice and no one's standing for them. Will you? And that was the start of it for us. And man, when we got into it, we had just no idea what we were doing. I mean, no idea. Just trying to learn and figure it out. And
yeah, I don't think, Big Chief, I don't think he was saying he bought them. I think he bought their freedom. I don't know where they went after that. I don't think he like bought them and took them on an airplane and brought them to America. I don't think that's what he's saying. What I'm saying is there has to be some sort of systems in place, hopefully, to help these people.
And I also want to mention one thing about that story with my dad before we move on is, who is my dad sitting with? A group of pastors. Do you know how many of those pastors Shawn said, hey, Mr. Tebow, let me go find him dinner. Mr. Tebow, let me go find him a night stay. Mr. Tebow, let me go figure out food for tomorrow, or all of this stuff. Not one of them. Why? Because they all had really good excuses.
Jeez.
Like, well, Mr. Tebow, you know, those people that you're giving that money to, they're going to go do something else bad with it. And yes, Shawn, is probably true, but go say it to those 4 girls. And I'm not saying that my dad had a perfect strategy in all of this, but man, he just knew the true infinite worth and value of those boys and girls, and he was willing to do whatever he could for them. And so many times we look and we try to weigh and judge in all of this, and sometimes God's saying, I want you to step in and I want you to be a warrior for them. I want you to fight for them. I want you to just talk on the peripheral or, you know, share. No, I want you to get in the fight for them. And I was also so convicted when my dad told me, when I asked about what the pastors did, and he told me, because I started to think, how many times in my life have I just made really good excuses? Because we can, it's easy. Well, you know, we're doing this, and one day I'm going to do that. One day we're going to figure it out, and you know, then I'm going to go on a mission trip, and I'm going to do these things, and we spend so much time making really good excuses, and I don't even think we always realize we're making good excuses. But so many times I look back and I say, no, to me, that's a really good excuse. It's a really good excuse. And honestly, we can fool ourselves and we can fool others. But I would challenge us, and I've challenged myself a lot. Are you really just saying, oh, you're tired, or you have to do this, or you have to do this, or I got to provide here, or I got to do this, but I got to go train, but I got to go do this? Or are you really just making a good excuse to avoid saying yes to something God's calling you to?
That's good.
But specifically, our heart is to get to as many and leverage anything and everything we can so that they can get out of this evil. And as I mentioned earlier, you think that so much is done by all these groups and gangs, and yes, that does take place in a lot of areas. But man, it's overwhelming when you think how much is done by families, by friends, by those in the trusted circle. And especially when we talk about the fight against child exploitation and child abuse, it's off the charts of what is being done in the families. And you know what's the, I don't know if I want to say most disappointing, but maybe one of the most heartbreaking is, do you know the #1 offender? Biological fathers.
Oh.
And it's not going to make your day. I brought a map to share with you. Is this map? Every red dot on that. So first of all, that is a DOJ law enforcement map. It's called the red dot map. And this is over the last 30 days. And every red dot on that map is at least one unique IP address of individuals downloading, sharing, distributing child images under the age of 12.
Oh.
And there's over 111,000 of them just in the US of the last 30 days.
That's awful. Over 100,000 unique IP addresses just in the last 30 days.
Wow. And I wanted to bring that because I think it brings to life so much of the evil that we're trying to face. And people will say, well, that's just over there and it's in those countries and it's all of those places.
Yeah, who do you think is consuming this stuff?
It's not. Shawn, it's right here in our backyard. It is right here. And out of everyone, and some people will say, okay, well they're just downloading and sharing it and distributing it, but they're not. 55 to 85% are also hands-on offenders. And your average offender has 13 victims in their lifetime. 13 victims. Every one of those red dots is there's a boy or girl that is suffering on the other end of what they're sharing, downloading, or distributing. And I wanted to share that with you because I know that your heart breaks for them. And I think that map brings to life the evil that we're trying to fight. And it's why, one of our hearts is to get the Renewed Hope Act passed through Congress, because it takes the law enforcement officers right now and victim identification officers at C3, and they're amazing. Some of my favorite people in the world, but there's 7 of them. right now at C3.
There's how many?
7.
Gosh, bro.
Seven people to
Yes, and
combat
also
all of
ICACs
this.
are working on that. We love ICAC, and we need to enhance their funding because they desperately need it. Internet crimes against children, and they're awesome, 62 locations around the country, but primarily the ones that are also working on this are at C3. And we want to get the Renewed Hope Act passed because it would take it from 7 to 200. And now we have a much greater chance if we have all of those officers that are trained and equipped to be fighting against this evil. And again, that's the last 30 days. And that's not getting into live streaming or grooming or so many of the other issues we're fighting. That is just in peer-to-peer networks of them sharing and distributing child images under the age of 12.
This is 12 and under.
12 and under.
111,423 unique IP addresses.
Yuck.
And some people will say, well, that's just, they're just downloading it and they're just sharing it. And no, it's not just that easy. You have to go in, you have to download it, just, a peer-to-peer, and then you have to be able to download all of these images, and then you're sharing them. It's not like this just happens by accident. It's not like, oh, I just looked at a bad picture, and it's not like this is a photo of a baby in a bathtub. No, so many of these are brutal abuse of children. And when we go back to those 50,000 boys and girls that are unknown in the ICSA database that we were talking about before, out of those 57,000, over 3,000 of them were infants or toddlers.
Oh, man.
That's terrible. So he is advocating for a specific policy, which that's crazy if there's only 6 people working on this. The Renewed Hope Act is a bipartisan bill aimed at strengthening Homeland Security investigation capabilities and combating this sort of exploitation and abuse. Specifically, it seeks to increase HSI resources, hire specialized personnel, and improve training to better identify and rescue victims. The Tim Tebow Foundation and various bipartisan leaders are advocating for its passage. That's awesome. So, listen, this sort of stuff is so much more prevalent. And I think that when you hear those sorts of numbers, they should be jarring. They should frustrate you. The fact that there's now policy being proposed for this is a massive net positive. And I think that act hopefully should get passed. And I don't know what the practical steps are to put pressure on this. But the fact that this sort of stuff is happening in our own backyards is really wild, and the damage that it's doing to these kids is really wild. And yeah, who knows what kids in your neighborhood could be going through something like this. Tim Tebow using his platform and his resources to advocate for something like this. And I'm sure there's stuff we could pick apart about Tim Tebow that you don't like and whatever, but this is good work that he's doing. And I think more people need to really consider this as something to advocate for. I was having a conversation with somebody, and I'm not trying to get in trouble, but I was having a conversation with somebody about what does oppression look like in America in 2025, post 2020. What does oppression look like? And I think oppression is real. I think there is issues that people are going through. But when I think of something like this, or I think of something like the unborn, when I think about children and the kind of stuff that they're going through, to me, I think this is something that all of us can put a higher priority on, right? Christians have always fought historically for the marginalized, and that started with fighting for those kids that were not wanted and thrown out by the Romans. At that time, predominantly women, girls, that they were just discarding them in the rivers, and Christians would rescue them. And Christians also advocated greatly in the real first sexual revolution, which is ushering in monogamy and ushering in one man, one woman, one lifetime marriage. Massive, massive sexual revolution that Christians ushered in. And so when I think about all the ills in society, to me, these sorts of things I think need more attention. I'm a big advocate for the unborn, and I partner with organizations like Live Action and Human Coalition. And I think that's, like, to me, one of the most important. But something like this, I think, is really high on actual people who are the most vulnerable, being oppressed oftentimes by their caregivers. And there needs to be changes done in these areas like the Renewed Hope Act so that the vulnerable can be protected, that the oppressed can be set free, captives can be set free. And I don't know how that looks on a practical level. As I'm looking up, it says to support the Renewed Hope Act of 2024, you can contact your local senators and representative, urging them to vote in favor of the bill. You can also get involved in signing petitions and staying informed about the issue through the Tim Tebow Foundation, which introduced the bill. Additionally, you can donate to the foundation to help their efforts in anti-trafficking exploitation. Okay, so it was introduced, but it did not receive a vote. So to me, this is like a no-brainer in terms of like how everyone, Christian or not, should be willing to advocate for policy changes like this. Interesting stuff. So anyway, props to Tim Tebow. Props to Shawn Ryan for having this conversation. I think it's super necessary, and hopefully, hopefully this brings more awareness to it. Hey, thank you so much for checking out the video. Please be sure to comment below and subscribe and all that good stuff. And check out this other video that YouTube seems to be recommending just for you. Let me know if they nailed it. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.